Hey Internet, how you doing? Welcome back for another episode of the Schoencast, your guide to edtech workflow. It's been a while. Hey, how's it going? With the Schoencast, I hope to share tips and tricks to improve your edtech workflow, keep organized, and better communicate so that we can make our teaching lives easier and ultimately better impact student learning. In today's episode, we're going to look at Google Forms and specifically the Sheets responses, answering the age-old question, even with the new Google Forms. What do we do with all that data? How do you make sense of it? How do you organize it? How do you make it easier to view? Alright, so we're going to start off by looking at a Google form. Here's a form I used in class this week. And I click Responses to see my 21 student responses. One of the strengths of the new Google Forms is you can view a summary of responses and individual responses right here. But we're not going to get there today. I want to show you some other tricks. You used to view responses directly in a sheet. Now you have to click this little green Sheets button to create it. So from your form, all your data populates a spreadsheet in addition to being in the Responses tab here. So you still have all your responses within the Forms app itself. That's one of the newer features. But we have here the Google Sheet, just like always. Every row is a different set of student data, of form responses. Row 1 is always your headers. Don't mess with row 1. After data comes in, though, you're free to manipulate it, play with it if you'd like to, but there's some best practices and tricks to make that really work for you. The first trick I want to show you is how to look at your data holistically. So we just saw back here that you can see a summary of responses. But when I look at my pie chart, what you'll notice is it is awesome because it tells me the different statistics. But there's another way that I think is valuable. If you go to Form, Summary of Responses, all right, this is one of the great tricks if you're not familiar, and if you are, a little refresher here, you get a summary of everything on your form, including graphs and charts and a list of all of the data, the open-ended questions. Now my students all selected their names, so there's a lot of data here, and they all had a different topic, so again, a lot of data here. Links to their work. Now imagine if these were individual student responses, you now get a holistic view of the question, not identifying the students in that particular row. But what else I love about this is you can take your graphs here off of this summary responses, and if you choose to, you can copy and paste them. You can highlight this all. You can pull it into a blog, a website. This link is actually live. You can share that too. So, trick number 1, creating a summary of responses. Valuable tool. Same as the old forms, but still just as valuable. Now we look at this data and we go, what the hell is this? How do I look at everything? I don't know what's what. Well, if you notice row 1, the headers, it always stays still. That's because of trick number 2, and that is freezing rows and columns. So, you highlight a row, and you go to View, Freeze, and right now we are frozen up to row 1. Now let's say I wanted my usernames frozen. Watch this. View, Freeze, Columns, up to current column. And now, no matter how much I scroll, my usernames always stand still along with everything to the left of them. Now, I didn't do the best job on this form because the new Google Forms hides the checkbox to record username within your domain. Not my favorite place for it, so I forgot for a while here. So here, this brings us to step number 3. If you ever wind up with extra columns in your forms, you do not want to delete them. I do not recommend deleting any columns within a Google form. Probably nothing's going to happen, but it could mess up some of your links and later automations if you choose to use any add-ons. Instead, highlight the column, right-click on the column header, the letter B, hide column. Look at that. And it's gone. But you'll notice the little arrow here, it's still here. How do I get it back? Well, highlight the columns around it, right-click again, unhide columns. Ta-da! Now you can hide whatever data is you don't want to see at that moment, whether it's something temporarily, whether it's something permanent. Now you're looking around and you're like, oh, I can't see the words here. How do you make things fit? Well, here's step 3. Step 3, make things fit the space you have. Go to the end of any column, and you see your mouse change like this, or the end of any row. Guys, even better, if I double click, it will resize to the appropriate width. Appropriate width, here we go. It knows the longest name in the column, and it will resize. So if I highlight multiple cells, multiple rows, and I click it, it will resize them all. Beautiful, easy, ta-da! Now let's say I want things to fit differently. I look at column G, and I want to see what this says, but I don't want to bring it to the full width. I can bring it all the way over by double-clicking. Number 4, wrap and clip text. Let's say for column G, I want this to fit in with less width here. Format, text wrapping, and wrap. Notice I clicked G before I did it, so every cell in this column is now wrapped. Meaning, if I resize this again, look at that. It increases my row height to wrap the text around to the next line. Alternatively, my link. I don't need to see all these links. So I'm going to go into highlight H, format, text wrapping, and clip. And now nothing overflows. Nothing wraps. I don't need to see the links. They're still there though. If I click one, you'll notice it's right up here in my function bar. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's review. So far we have learned how to 1. View summary of form responses, 2. How to freeze rows and columns, 3. How to hide rows and columns, 4. How to adjust the width and height to make data fit, and 5. How to clip and wrap text to make it more readable. One last trick for you today, bringing us to number 6. Formatting. And by formatting, I mean fonts and colors. Nice and simple stuff that will make your life easier. So if I click a row or column, number or letter, remember it highlights the whole thing. Oftentimes, I like to click my header row and change my font color. Make it stand out. So we're going to change it so that we have our black background. We are going to add a font color. Let's make it white. I might make this bold. I might make my font bigger, and if I make it bigger and then want it to fit, I would then resize a little, and you've got it by now. So that by the time I'm done, my sheets, and this is just a sheet, will often look something like this. My headers really stand out. I'll color code my rows, often using some programming that maybe we'll touch on in a future Schoencast. But you want it to be easy for you to view, to understand, to know what you are looking at. And that takes us through our 6 tips for viewing form data in today's Schoencast. I love forms, I love sheets, I love data, and I love how easy technology makes it for us to learn from that data, to keep ourselves better organized, to communicate, and to really impact our practice. It makes it easier to know more about my students than ever before. So I hope these tips and tricks helped you to learn more about Google Sheets and in connection to Google Forms, to begin to play with data more easily, more readily, and more effectively in your own practice. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Schoencast. That is episode 3, hopefully with more to come. I'm Adam Schoenbart. Please read more at aschoenbart.com, where I write about forms, edtech, and feedback all the time. Or join me over at Twitter at Mr. Schoenbart. Give me some feedback on today's screencast. Ask any questions on edtech, automation, and workflow. Let me know what you'd be interested in watching on the Schoencast. Thanks again.